Hello, welcome back to another Pen Talk. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for following me on the PenBBS journey. And here we have 3 finishes of the 352, another new pen that they've come out with. And let's not be in suspense, it's another great pen. I got these 3 finishes. I may have had 5 or 6 to choose from, but Cedar was definitely on my short list, and I actually bought Cedar off of eBay, and I paid a few dollars more than I would have if I'd have waited it to show up on the PenBBS site on Etsy. I bought it from a regular seller on eBay. So that's this one. Here's the eBay auction that I won. Then they came out in volume, or at least in numbers, on Etsy. So I picked up a Frostfire and a Niango. That's in the cat series. So they have the sword clip, which is similar to what we've seen on the 456 and the 355. And I happen to think this design is nice, and I like it better than the other design that's on the 308. It's a more organic rounded design, and this sword design, I just find it to be nicer. It would have been nice if this was in gold trim, or if this was in gold trim. I really do like the gold trim, especially the matte gold trim, but this is what was available. If we just take a quick little bit of a detail view, that Cedar is just an amazing resin. I originally just had a pen rest with it, but now I got a pen. Frostfire just has that nice chatoyancy to it, and we'll compare it to the Frostfire that I have in a 308. And this is just a nice cracked acrylic, if that's one of the descriptive terms for this style of acrylic. And I like the variations in colors. There's purple, there's grays, a little ivory. They all have a cap band that doesn't extend down to the bottom, so that's a little bit different. But it's the classic PenBBS Shanghai, but there's the model number 352. So it has the 3 little elements on there, and the PenBBS lines up with the clip, which is what they generally do with their designs. Yeah, this doesn't have any of that depth that we come to see in some of these other resins, especially the other 2 352s that I have, but it just has a classic look. And sometimes a classic look just is what you need. Right away, I'll show you one of the things that I'm disappointed with. This end cap unscrews. And of course, that ring can come off. So if I was to design this pen, I would just glue this thing on. There's no need for it to be removable. It's not like it's a blind cap that you can, use the captured converter. And that type of design I've also found on the Live-In-U XIXO that I did a review on a few months ago. So that's my only real flaw with the design. I don't understand why they didn't glue that in place, which most other pen makers do when they have that design. And is there a need for this ring and cap on the end? They could have just let it be a nice square end without going to that extra level. Aesthetics, you have that silver band at the bottom matching a silver band at the top of the cap. So, maybe some designer wanted it that way, but I think from an engineering viewpoint, it's just an extra piece there that doesn't serve any functional purpose. Cedar and Frostfire came in the standard box. So it's 352. This is the model, the finish 1 or the color 1. Not certain what this number is. It could be some other identifier. And Frostfire came in a similar box. 63 is the number, but why there's a 13, I don't know. And Nangou came in a metal box, which I've seen before. I think my 355 that was the fireworks, or the, you know, the year-end model. So this is just a metal box, foam insert. So I think these are packaged by Bienni and not packaged by PenBBS. That's my theory. So one of the things I admire about PenBBS is their consistency in their colors. You know, here's two pens made quite a time difference between them, and that resin is still consistently the same. You know, the 308, which some people call 266, but it is a 308 model. And there's that other style clip. You can see the difference between them. So these top finials can unscrew. They take a little bit of effort. And on the 308, the cap bands extends all the way down, which I think adds more protection as far as any potential cracking issues or things like that. But again, a design has its own little features to it, and these are two beautiful pens. So the other pen I have in the Niango is the 471, and it has a gold band on the end, so I think you can get a little bit of perspective on how the gold trim items, they kind of change, I think, a little bit of the way it looks. And this is a resin, it's going to have variations in it, so no two pens will look the same. Frostfire, you're going to get a little bit more consistency because of the fact that it's kind of a one color, where these have variations in color as you move up and down the rods that they were machined from. But I just find this a very unique, nice resin, and now I have two pens in that resin. The Cedar Pen was a little lonely. It doesn't have a partner. It does have a pen rest made out of the same material. And again, that's when I got the pen rest is when I said, I really like that material. So I'm really glad I got an opportunity to get a pen and a pen rest of the same material. When I bought the Frostfire from Etsy, it was listed as having a REF, which I assume is round extra fine nib. And I expected a nib in the same style as the newer round fine and round mediums. And I was a little disappointed when I found it was just the extra fine nib that they used to just sell as a spare nib. It was the only way to get it a year ago. And when those spare nibs disappeared, the nibs disappeared. So I pulled this out of the Frostfire, was able to pull the nibs out of all 352s. Yes, it's a screw in and out assembly, so you can easily swap nibs that way if you don't want to pull them out. But if you look at these two, they're the same nib. I'll get some extra white in there. You know, they have an E on the nib for extra fine instead of an F for fine. And they are definitely less tipping material. And if you look at them, they don't have an upturn. So it is a different nib, but I really love the rounded fine and mediums that they have, and I was hoping that this was in that vein. Maybe, you know, maybe it is. Maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh. But we're just going to have to see how it writes. Let's do a little bit more close-up of that tipping material and that engraving. These are the two nibs I wanted to compare. This one is that new rounded fine, which has different markings on the nib. And the one beneath it is the extra fine, which called a round extra fine, but I guess I can see why that's the case. And it certainly is extra fine compared to that round fine. But it doesn't have the same type of tipping material on it. You know, it's just looks a little different. And I have written with this. When I had the spare nib, I put it in one of my pens. So we'll see how it looks, and we'll compare it to the rounded fine and the standard fine that's in most of the PenBBS pens that are sold. Other pens that I think are pens that you might want to consider in the same price range as the 352. And I just put these together as representative of the great variety of pens in this price range that you can get from the Chinese manufacturers. Here's the Moonman C1, which is just an excellent pen. 5 milliliters of ink, wonderful nib, beautiful design, reminiscent of another design. Here's a Moonman N3. Here's a Moonman M600S. Here's a Moonman M6. And here's a Wingsung 626. So, you know, 3 of these are flat top. 2 of them have a rounded shape, you know. This one a little more blunt, this one more pointy. This one in the dual fold design mode. So how does the 352 stack up? Well, I think it holds its own in this group. So the advantages that the 352 has is the amazing amount of resins and colors that it comes in. The disadvantage is it's only extra fine or fine nibs. And I don't think it compares to the nibs that are in these. Moonman has really upped their game recently with their new Moonman nib, which is a number 6 size. So it's in the same size as the one in the 352. But I don't think you could go wrong with any of these pens. And I've done reviews on all of these, so you can look at that review if you want more information. Here are these pens posted. Moonman M600, which is more expensive. The M600S is half the price and in the $20 to $30 range, is certainly the largest pen in this group. The M6 is the girthiest. It has that hefty size to it. The 626 has a small section here reminiscent of the Schaefer Balance, which it emulates. You know, the N3 has a nice straight section. It has the smallest nib of this group. This is like a number 5. This is like a 5.5, and these are 6s here. This is nice two-tone nibs here. Single tone on the PenBBS series. Let's zoom in a little bit as we can on the nib size. With all these pens, it's hard to get a real close-up look, so we're going to do a drive-by. Here we have the 352, the C1, the N3, the M600S, the M6, and then the 626. Hopefully that gives you a better appreciation of the nibs and sections and the great variety of pens that you have at this price point. So what ink to put in it? I figured Lake of Fire for Frostfire would be a good choice. Look at the color card, and it's a nice blue with a little bit of green in it, mostly blue. It's supposedly known for sheen, but I guess there's a little bit of it there, but you know, that's a ton of ink you got to put down to get that sheen. If we look at the chromatography, it's pretty clean. Nothing exceptional there. One of the other things that I found nice about the design of this pen is like the 268, that Vac Filler. It looks like they put a plastic insert in there right at the very top. That first ledge is where the section seats against the cap. And then at the very top is a plastic insert to protect any metal bits from ink. So I think that's a very nice thing for them to do. And as we can see from the light, that's a very interesting swirl pattern there in this Frostfire acrylic. And if we play it across the top, we'll see it's just chatoyancy in there. The rest of the resin is pretty clean blue. I think I mentioned a few times the ergonomics of PenBBS pens, so this just feels good in the hand. It's a standard 1, 2, a little less than 2.5 turns to get the cap off. The section feels great. It's about a perfect size for me. I'll give you those dimensions of the section. The pen is relatively light. We'll give you those weights. It posts very securely and really doesn't change the balance much, so it's easy to do, and that posts securely. So kudos again. You You know, classic design, but well executed and a great writing instrument. So, I'm not an extra fine nib guy, but I think this is about as good as you're going to get with an extra fine nib. You get some feedback, but it's not something that concerns me from writing. And that is definitely an extra fine line. No question about it. So I'm going to go on and compare this to other PenBBS nibs. But first, before I go on, let's rate this pen. I'm going to give it a 9.4. I almost went to 9.5, but it needs to be something a little bit more special to get a 9.4. So it gets a check on ergonomics, gets a check on build quality, which almost every PenBBS can get a check on that. So the first thing we're going to compare it to is the standard fine nib. I think you can see right away that there is a decent difference between the two. It's not dramatic, but it certainly is there. And because this is a fine line to begin with, so this one is maybe 60% of this line, and that's a real seat of the pants estimate. This nib is smoother, which is what you would expect because it's a bigger material on the end of that nib, and also that little upturn I think lends itself to be smoother. So this is a rounded fine. Which is pretty close to the other fine. In fact, it looks pretty close, almost identical there. And it is very smooth. And I like this nib the most of any of the ones that we've written with so far. Like I say, I'm not an extra fine person, but this fine will work fine for me, especially if you're taking notes and you're not on good paper. For a final comparison, we're going to do a rounded, we should spell, a rounded medium. And this is definitely a broader and wetter line than the extra fine and fine. You know, almost double the fine. And this is very, very smooth. So hopefully you've liked this comparison of PenBBS nibs, and they'll give you some idea of what you might like. And not every nib is available on every pen, which is unfortunate, but it's occasionally they have spare nibs, and as long as it's in a nib assembly, it's very easy to unscrew and screw it in and out. And obviously only the 268 and 322 don't have nib assemblies. So we're back to the 352, and after using it for a couple days, I've noticed these fine threads here on the barrel. You can cross thread the cap. You have to be careful when you thread it on. It doesn't take a lot of attention, but if you're not paying attention and you have the cap at an angle, you can feel those threads start to cross thread. I'll probably put a little silicone grease lubricant on these just to make them even smoother than they are. So we're coming near the ends. I want to thank you for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed this look at another new PenBBS pen. One that I have to admit I didn't see coming, but I'm glad it's here. May you have many great writing experiences. Enjoy putting ink on paper and enjoy seeing your thoughts show up in 2 dimensions. So We're at the end of this video, but obviously more to follow. So stay tuned. Bye for now until the next video. For an extra fine, it's not bad. And keeping the nib on paper is obviously important to get it to right.